This is the Final Word Daily. Regrettably, we're in the middle of Perth Stadium on day 3. We're never allowed out this close to the pitch in ordinary circumstances. If you're watching on YouTube or social media, you'll know the pitch is just over our shoulders here. The 22 yards that brought a 2-day result, although not because of it. It's causation or correlation with these things all the time. As in, we always talk about where pitches fit into this. It was correlative, I believe, in this instance. You can talk more about that in a moment. Baz, good afternoon to you. We're here for Maurice Blackburn Lawyers, Australia's #1 plaintiff law firm, who are the principal partners of the Final Word. And even though this would have been the middle of day 3, the middle of the first test match, had it gone the distance in the conventional sense, we are well and truly wrapped up. The 7th shortest test match by balls bowled in the history of the game, for a completed result, that is, for a win or a loss either way. And it all feels rather unsatisfactory when you put it in those terms, even if we did see one of the all-time great individual performances yesterday. Just give us a sense of your mindset before we go into a few of the issues in the wash-up ep.
Well, just doing the math in my head while you were talking about where we would have been, this would have been the perfect halfway mark of this test match, midway through second session on day 3. However, there is no test cricket. It finished late last evening. But, all I'm thinking is, even when Travis Head started and him and Jake Weather all put 50 on the board, and then Manas came and joined him, for the first 15 minutes of that partnership, nobody would have thought. I did not think that the game was going to finish yesterday.
No, it was the only way the game was a 2-dayer was Australia being rolled in 40 overs,
exactly.
right? Extra half an hour and England bowling them out for 130 again. It wasn't Australia chasing 205 in 29 overs. And they got there inside regulation time. They didn't even need the extra
not at all.
half an hour. By the way, we should stop calling it the extra half an hour. It's the extra 8 overs, as you and I learnt the hard way in Barbados earlier this year, where the extra half an hour went for 45 minutes. Anyway, I digress. Continue, please.
Yeah, and, a lot of people I'm seeing on the various platforms who are not here talk about how it's because of the pitch, and the pitch really had nothing to do with it. Last year, we saw a similar start to the test match here in Perth. Now, that was a much more challenging wicket to bat on, and it stayed challenging till probably late on day 2, and it took the efforts of KL Rahul and Yashasvi Jaiswal, who batted very traditionally, very normally for almost 63 overs, where I think you said they went at a run rate of 2.8.
2.8 in their partnership. I had a look at it yesterday. I had reason to go back to that scorecard. And, KL Rahul, to use him as the comparison point here, he's a guy with a 50-ball international 100, multiple outrageous innings in white ball cricket, but, he demonstrated an ability to go down the gears to reflect the circumstances, and that'll be part of our chat today, I suppose, whether England is willing to take an approach that doesn't necessarily mirror that precisely, but at least has got some candour built into it, some nuance built into it, or the analysis of themselves, whether there's any candour associated with that. Not contrition quite so much, but just like being honest and frank about the shortcomings in this game, especially yesterday when they were bowled out for 164 in their second innings from a position of real strength.
Exactly, and some of those dismissals where, whatever level of cricket you play, you hear batters talk about you don't want to make the same mistakes more than once, most times in a series, but especially not in the same test. But it was a manner of dismissals that stood out, and I know people are going to see how the 2 innings were wrapped up in 30-odd overs each and say England must have really bass-balled this. I don't even know whether it was bass-ball, it was just loose cricket. And I don't know whether loose cricket equals bass-ball always or whatever they call it these days, because it was just low percentage cricket. Some of the same dismissals, if you just replay, especially those 3 on the trot, Pope, Brook and Root, which just broke the back of England's second innings. Look, last year we had Virat Kohli driving at balls outside off stump or edging balls outside off stump over and over again, and that pretty much ended his test career. He retired after that. But so this was them. Maybe England were playing slightly flashier shots outside off stump, but the manner of dismissal in many ways was the same. But what really stood out, that's as a result, was it was low percentage cricket on these pitches with the extra bounce, especially the Perth pitch here. If you keep driving outside off stump without fully committing to it or without even trying to go inside out, all you're going to achieve eventually is going to nick off. And Harry Brook played a few shots where he would make room for himself and really properly try to clear covers and hit it for 4. I think he will look back at that dismissal and go, well, that's not what I did. I just stood at my spot and just flashed at a wide one and got out. Ollie Pope, on the other hand, tried it 25 times without succeeding to get an edge, and then finally got the edge.
Yeah, and look, we've obviously, you and I have done a lot of this post-game analysis, both on the final word and elsewhere, and the way the conversation's moving forward, to take our conversation forward as well. Certainly in the post-game interviews yesterday, using Brendan McCullum's on BBC as the one that's been picked up most widely, he is adamant they're not going to move away from their blueprint. Now, you can interpret that how you wish. I don't expect he's going to talk about, junking their blueprint after one loss either.
Not at all.
No one's suggesting that.
Yes, yeah.
But it's more, I guess, the attitudinal approach to a question like that of how do you change things up or how do you evolve. They don't seem like they're overly open to it. So there's a couple of markers here. One is the Canberra PM's 11 fixture. The 2-day game next weekend, or this coming weekend, which was meant to give England, it was scheduled in order to give England a credible pink ball warm-up game before they go to the Gabba for a day-night test match, which is thoroughly in keeping with what touring sides have had since they started playing day-night test cricket a decade ago. And they are, as far as we're aware, unless they've changed their minds. And it's been widely reported on, so we're not just sort of speculating.
And Ben Stokes spoke about it in all his interviews last evening as well.
They're going to Queensland instead. They're having some downtime. And I'm sure they'll do some cricket whilst they're in Noosa. But broadly speaking, they're having some downtime, hitting some balls. Now, there's nothing fundamentally wrong with them getting away from the cricket bubble and so on. I don't disagree with that in the slightest. It's a really important part of these guys getting through a series, and England have used that type of thing to their advantage in the past. What seems, how would I put it? It seems immovable is now they've got this extra time. There probably is the ability to adjust their schedule, and a number of their players haven't duked it out against the pink ball before. You can't tell me that spending some time in the middle against Pete Siddle is going to make you any less a cricketer in terms of preparing for the challenge that'll be presented at the Gabba the following Thursday. I know they don't rate tour games these days. I know that they prefer to train within themselves, but how's that gone for them so far? Playing at Lilac Hill in conditions that did not resemble this whatsoever, a slow flat one. I mean, I'm not saying they could have got on the whacker. I understand that they tried to get the whacker for a game and were unsuccessful in getting it, but now they are given a chance for. It won't be comparable entirely playing at Canberra compared to Brisbane, but at least you'll be playing with a pink ball under lights against high quality opposition. And if they don't move on that, I think that what that'll say to me is that they aren't that open more generally to changing whatever it is that they've started off to do here. And does that, if you meet someone in life who is so rigid and so unwilling to even consider other people's perspectives, I mean, what would we normally think of a person like that, or groups like that, who are so relentlessly committed to one way of thinking? That doesn't usually reflect well upon someone.
Not at all. Yeah.
So what does it say about what does it say about the way this team's hardwired if they are simply unwilling to listen to anything external? And not to say they should be watching episodes of The Final Word and forming policy around that.
They should always be watching episodes of The Final Word.
But it isn't necessarily just us. To say there's a uniform opinion on anything would be unfair as well. But there are lots of people around the game.
A slew of former
the
England
team.
captains.
I was going to cite Michael Vaughan, who I do the segment on CricBuzz with, who is like, you've got to make the most of this two-day opportunity in Canberra to get some time in the middle against the pink ball. But the last time they commented on Vaughan, he was dismissed as another has-been, right?
Yeah.
So, that's the bit that I'm mindful of. So last night when we were sort of talking about the game that was and the day that was with our colleagues and so on, well, they might just bounce back next week and flame at Brisbane. I mean, they might, but if they don't learn anything from what's happened in the last 2 days, the degree of difficulty will remain exceedingly high, which is going to make it very difficult for them to get back in the series. So I think, very gifted group of cricketers, especially the ball strikers they've got. We know all of that. But, Test cricket, how much of it is played above the shoulders? And that's the bit that probably concerns me most out of yesterday.
Massively. And I do wonder, I mean, you follow this English team closer than I do, Adam, whether, like, if you are a Zach Crawley or an Ollie Pope, who seems to be one of those cricketers who likes to work a lot on his game and bats a lot in the nets. I'm not saying the others don't, but he definitely always comes across as that kind of character. Like, if he goes up to Brendan McCullum and Ben Stokes and says, like, hey, I wouldn't mind going and playing in this game, because I'm not even expecting the whole England team to go there. But if there are the batters, it's the batters in particular. Bowlers, obviously, you want to, even though they only played, it was just a 2-day test, but still, maybe you want to keep your bowlers, because of the makeup of their bowling attack, you want to keep them on ice. But what if some of the batters, the younger batters, or even the slightly more senior batters who don't play a lot against the pink ball, want to go and get a hit against the pink ball? I wonder if they'd be allowed to do that. You're in a better position.
Well, I wouldn't know if I don't know if it's a case of seeking permission, but I just don't see any meaningful downside. They're going to have this extra 3 days off. I'm sure they've adjusted plans to a certain degree. They're not playing cricket, right? So, and there's obviously flexibility built into all of these plans. You can, you're an international cricketer. You can largely dictate terms when you're in that privileged position. And look, this is not really relevant to this discussion, but you and I talked about this on radio earlier today. That this fixture's been in the calendar since the 1960s, early 1960s, when Robert Menzies was Prime Minister, got brought back in 1984, been played every year since then. And this will be the first time it's not been a national team, and it'll be the first time it's essentially an A team, a youth squad. There's something there too, I think, just showing regard for the fixture, showing respect for the game that's been put on for you in the nation's capital, where the Prime Minister hosts you at the Lodge. And, that's not really relevant to the 11 or 13 or 14 or 15 cricketers as much as it is the administration staff. But I think this should have always been part of their itinerary, whether they want to spend time in Canberra or not, to at least demonstrate that there is an element of respect being shown to ultimately the board that's hosting you. That's how these things work, right?
You would think so. I think it does come across as, whether intentionally or not, it is disrespectful that there is tradition here, and the Prime Minister of the country is going to be there. And I just want to see that scene when Anthony Albanese is just standing there and he's expecting Joe Root, and because I'm assuming his schedule is very busy. You've been closer to prime ministers than I have, for him to keep an eye on like who's coming and who's not. But I'm sure he's expecting to see Stokes and maybe Brendan McCullum and Joe Root and Jofra Archer and Mark Wood. And then, and no offense to the England Lions players, but then he has to be introduced to Josh Hull and James Drew, who he might not have ever heard of, and he would be standing there wondering, like, what happened to the English Test team? And then he finds out they're in Noosa. I don't know how it works. Like,
again, this isn't a huge thing. It
isn't,
but it's just a little thing that kind of nagged away at me around all of this. And so there's...
And just to the other point you made about the way they talk of the ex-English legends and former captains, I wonder what the threshold is, though, Adam. Like, so all these years it was built around, you wait, we have the perfect weapon to take to Australia and beat them on Australian soil. I know there's 4 test matches left, there's 1 test match gone. They could bounce back, they might bounce back. I hope they bounce back for our sake and just for the sake of this series. But what if they don't? I mean, at what point, because they've upset so many people, forget about what the Australians say, they've upset so many people within the English cricket system by, like you said, constantly disregarding or discounting whatever they've said. I wonder what the threshold is and what happens if this series doesn't go their way. I know they have contracts up to 2027, both Ben Stokes and Brendan McCullum. But if this series goes really badly for them, where
we know what happens. We know what happens when teams lose heavily in an Ashes series, and let's sincerely, from a cricket-loving perspective, hope that it doesn't go.
I really hope it doesn't.
I mean, but I'm right now. You can probably tell from my tone on the podcast. That's what I'm worried about. Like, I'm not. Yeah, sure, I speak with an Australian accent. I'm a proud Australian, but I'm a Test cricket lover for the purpose of what we're doing here. And all I've been banging on about for, I don't know, years now, many months at least, is the possibility of a super competitive Ashes series. And it's still there. It's 1-0.
It was a competitive test.
Hutton's team were 1-0 down as well, albeit they had an unbelievable side. They brought out a 54-55. But still, anyway, the other thing, just to round out on the batting group, we'll do Australia after the break, by the way. Because there are a number of talking points for them, but this feels more relevant, the England stuff at the moment. It feels like the Bazball regime has made Ollie Pope as a Test number 3. It's provided them with countless opportunities, 800s in the position. I think it's the most since David Gower for England at number 3. His overall numbers, the bird's eye view of it, he made a couple of hundreds during the summer. And the 46 he made on Friday was thoroughly in keeping with that kind of record. But I sometimes feel like having made him, it sometimes breaks him too. Like, he demonstrated on Friday the kind of player he can be, and then he revealed on Saturday the kind of player that also lies within. And that's concerning for England, because that is where someone of his now experience, he made his Test debut in 2018. He's been the vice-captain. Indeed, he's captained this Test team, I think, on 6 or 7 occasions now, something like that. That's when his onboard computer needed to click in when he played and missed for the 12th time trying to drive on the up well wide of the off stump when it was very, very clear what the plan was, and not being able to realise, okay, this is the bit to absorb pressure to get these guys into multiple spells and to try and bat all day. But that seemingly never clicked, and they can look. They might retrospectively say, oh, it was the surface. We just bowled on it, but and that's easy. That's an easy get out of jail card.
Yeah.
But players of that experience are kind of paid to find a way. And if you need to play more conservatively in the effort of batting for longer, well, from time to time, that is what's asked of you. And the Bazball at its best, Lawrence Booth and Nick Holt wrote beautifully about this a couple of years ago in their excellent book, was that Bazball at its best, they were able to, or they have been able to work out when the right time to apply pressure and the right time to absorb pressure. I've probably said that 100 times on different platforms in the last 2.5 years. Like yesterday was a classic time of not getting that right. We just had Robin Smith on radio with us, which was an absolute joy.
How good was that?
And that Barry Richards equation
How
about
good
batting.
was
What do you say? It was arrogance plus humility equals confidence.
A plus H equals C.
A plus H equals C. Well, they got they often get the A bit right, but
Yeah.
I'd like to see more of the H bit.
Yeah.
To really give themselves the best chance of success. That's all we're really talking about here. It doesn't guarantee success. It's the best chance objectively of success, or at least how I feel it to be. And I'm just, some journalist at the end of the day, but it's, it's not like we're bereft of any understanding of the game. You watch this your whole life, you tend to pick up the rhythms of these
For
things,
sure.
Especially watching it in this country. And anyway,
Yeah,
I think that's about all I have to say about England. To be honest.
Yeah. Now, just my last bit on Ollie Pope is, as you was talking about him making his debut in 2018, the other number 3 at the other end of the spectrum, or the other dressing room, Manas Labuschagne, also made his debut in 2018. Not as a number 3. Ollie Pope didn't make his debut as a number 3 either. I remember he batted 6 against India. But the career graph for Manas, obviously it went through that steep phase and now it's come back, and he seems to have had like almost 2 careers already at number 3, whereas Ollie Pope to me still seems to be finding his feet, which kind of puts that comparison into perspective as well.
Yeah, look, what's the outlier? Was it his second innings or his first innings? If we're really honest,
that's the point.
What's the outlier?
He looked good in the first innings.
The way that the really measured, like traditional way that he played on Friday, is that actually the outlier? I'm not sure. I would love nothing more. I've seen Ollie Pope play some of the best innings at first class level I've ever seen. That 100 against Yorkshire in 2022 was an absolute blinder. Essentially won them the championship. Played one against Hampshire a couple of years ago, maybe to start the 24 season or thereabouts. He is capable of being an absolute world beater. And when you sort of, again, I sometimes feel as though the way the neural pathways have been drilled, for want of a better word, in the last couple of years about the way they kind of have to play to be in keeping with the vibe of the spirit of the plan that's being put in place, can be to the detriment of some. And I know we're focusing a lot on one cricketer, but at the end of the day, it was his dismissal and his attitude to the second innings which opened up England so badly, and we all know what happened next.
We did, and the reason I've been smiling for the last couple of minutes is there's a big group doing a stadium tour out there. I don't know how much you pay for a stadium tour, and they've been trying to take pictures of the ground for the last 10 minutes, and we'll be in all their pictures.
If you're a listener to the final word and you've taken those photos, send it through and we'll bung it on our excellent Instagram page, which has been humming, thanks Anachi, over the last few days. Baz, we will take a pause and we'll talk about Australia, of which there are a number of issues, not all of them positive too, notwithstanding their 8-wicket victory yesterday. On the way through to that, Zeus sleeps. Now, you are going to be given, as I gave Jeff his a couple of days ago. He's been wearing it. Jeff shaved his beard at exactly the right point to stick it on without. Now I don't know how it'll work. Let me a quick squeeze here. It'll work. You can probably get it underneath the bit there and get it underneath your chin. I accidentally said you strap it on last night. You stick it on. To strap it on would imply something else altogether.
I'm not strapping anything on there.
No, quite. Nor me. But yeah, it would. It provides your tongue muscles rather.
Right.
It stimulates the muscles around the tongue. Anyway. You know what I'm trying to say.
Yes.
And it brings your tongue forward when you sleep. It gets the air down there in a more efficient way. And you having had sleep apnea, you know all about this.
Oh, yes.
Most people who snore do so for the reasons that the Zeus attacks.
Yeah.
Is attacks the right word?
It just opens
penetrates
it up.
and it opens it up that way. So it's a money back guarantee. So you can give a dart. You can have a go at this. And if you've got someone in your life who snores, or indeed if you know you snore, and if you snore and you sleep in the same room, or indeed the same
it's for
part of
both
the
of
house,
you.
it's for all of you.
All
and
of
this is
you.
coming
Or the
up
neighbor
to Christmas.
as well.
Coming up to Christmas, what better gift than the gift of sleep? That's what I say. The gift of sleep.
Like it.
The gift of giving. TFW 2025 is the offer code. The link's in the show notes. Do it, buy it for somebody else. I've been using it. I've been sleeping brilliantly this week.
He has
and
looked fresher every morning.
I haven't been sleeping in the same room as Norcross. And Norcross is on the other side of Phil Meng's apartment that we're in at the
right.
moment.
Okay.
But if I need to sleep in the same room as Norcross to prove
You
it
could.
to you, I could, and I would, and I will.
But you wouldn't for other reasons. But
No, I
like,
wouldn't
yeah.
for other. Although Daniel and I have shared a bed, as you and I have, as Jeff and I have, as we all
We've
have.
all
We've all
shared
shared beds on the road. That's the reality of it. On the freelance hustle. But no, we do have our own. We are big kids. We have our own rooms now.
Good.
But no, you'll have one when we get to Melbourne. We're getting
All
a
right.
parcel of Zeus's when we get to Melbourne,
like
and
that.
you will be, which is in a couple of days, well, more than a couple of days because we're still only on day 3. From now, you will get one of those, and you can try it for yourself. As can anyone listening for a 5% discount. TFW 2025 Zeus Sleeps. Great to be in association with them. This is the final word daily that's not. It's the wash-up episode. We've done many of these, Jeff and I, on the field of play, as of you, for that matter, after a test match has ended on like day 4, and we come out here on day 5. Never on day 3.
Day 3 is
the 2-day
crazy.
test match that I covered in Brisbane with you a couple of years ago,
Yeah.
I immediately went to the airport on night 2
remember that,
and got home in time to buy a Christmas tree for the family with Winnie the next day. It was an absolute joy to get home so early. I don't feel that way this time. Part of the reason why we finished so early is due to your friend of mine, Travis Head, the mighty South Australian who you followed the career of so closely since moving here. But really, it's not about... Well, okay, let's zoom out a little bit here. The Khawaja, Head, Webster stories, and maybe even like the Renshaw story or the Inglis story, they're all related to one another. Even Nathan Lyon's spot in this story, they all now... I wouldn't call it Jenga pieces as much as where it sits on the puzzle board. If they make one call, it'll affect all the other players. Let me give you a scenario for Brisbane. In the last pink ball test match, Nathan Lyon didn't play at Sabina Park. Yes, a pink Duke's ball. It's pink Kookaburra, where Lyon has got an excellent record, an outstanding record actually, bowling in day-night test cricket. But if they wanted to, at Brisbane, play let's call it the percentages of it being a short test and lengthen the batting, they could play Webster as the all-round option and have the stability or security blanket of knowing that Webster can bowl some off breaks if they need him to, but more or less to strengthen the batting and have Carey at 8 or Webster at 8 in that scenario, which would make them very, very deep. And we know that lots of batting could come in handy if you're playing test matches that finish quickly. So that's one way of looking at it. Then there's the just head open and let the good times roll, or do they go pink ball test match? Balance of probability is that you want to have Head down the list to counter-attack if you need him. Then there is the Khawaja fit. Does Khawaja make a call himself? Is Khawaja on form grounds teetering on the edge, or are the runs that he made in the Sheffield Shield still sufficient currency to get him picked next week? These things are swirling around.
They are.
And, like I said before, it could be an Inglis who opened for the Caxi this weekend. I'm sure that was strategic to keep his hand in if they want to go that way. Matt Renshaw, who made 100 since we last did a podcast about this and is batting again today in the Sheffield Shield. There are a number of ways this can break down, make no mistake.
And I think it comes down to what they do with Usman Khawaja. From what we've been hearing, they didn't officially give him these 2 tests to prove himself, but the writing on the wall is that he had these 2 tests to make some runs to get deeper into the Ashes. Unfortunately for him, the back spasms happened, and I met him yesterday, maybe 20 minutes before the start of play. He just popped some pills for his pain, and he was looking very, very stiff. But they took the risk of, and he and the team took the risk of him fielding for most of England's innings before he went for that high catch and then landed awkwardly, and that was it. That's when he got up, and soon after he limped off the ground, and he looked very, very stiff and in extreme pain, which is what he told me he was feeling the previous day as well, where he couldn't move, and he wasn't very keen on popping pain pills just before coming out to bat either. So because they're strong pills, and you don't want to feel.
Sure.
And after he said that, I asked a few former legends in our commentary boxes about it, and they all kind of seem to agree that, yeah, you don't want to be popping any pills before you walk out to bat, especially when you have to face Wood and Archer and those guys, or regardless of who you're facing. But I think, who knows with Usman Khawaja, like it's a Brisbane test, like does that come
Home
into
test.
consideration?
It may. I
at
mean,
all?
if it's tough. I mean, this is one of those situations in life, Baz, where I would caution paying too much attention to anyone that's got too strong a view.
Yeah.
Because there'll be really strong views around Khawaja from some bad faith actors. So you've got to price that into the thinking. But Khawaja, owing to the fact that he's had strong opinions on lots of issues that are a long way from the cricket field, or indeed the boundary rope, among other things, he will, from some quarters, be attacked. Now, they'll see it as an opening. You can be certain of it. So, place them to one side and understand where they're coming from. I would say almost vested interests in seeing Khawaja out of the test team. They've made a call on him being everything they're not. And so that is part of this. It makes it slightly more complex in the public scrap than it is for other cricketers.
If it was anyone else, I mean, we're not even like being so not careful, but we're not being so cautious about really calling it here, right? Like, oh, this is the end of Usman Khawaja's career. We're not going to do that because honestly, we don't know.
We don't know.
The bigger question is the impact that Travis Head walking out to bat as an opener had on the English bowlers. I mean, you can argue now that they know that he might do that, they might prepare differently for him and bowl differently to him. But it just changed everything. And for me, Adam, it wasn't even what he did from the point he got to his 30s or 40s to when he raced away to 100. It was just the first 6 overs or 7 overs when him and Jake Weatherall batted, and they had great flow. I mean, and England started bowling really well. Don't get me wrong. They bowled very well to start with. A couple of short deliveries here or there that Weatherall pulled. But there were like plays and misses. Jofra Archer got Jake Weatherall to leave a lot of deliveries to start with. It took him 10 balls before he got off the mark for the first time in Test cricket. So England bowled well. But what Head and Weatherall did well, which often we haven't been able to see since the retirement of David Warner, in these kinds of conditions, is some flow to the innings where they were scoring at 3.5, 4 and over. And it's not been easy being Usman Khawaja either. Every other day there's been a different partner at the other end to build that rapport as well. It has not been easy. So it just felt like the kind of flow and tempo that they have lacked for a while now at the top. So now that it has worked, it's not even a personnel thing, it's more about an approach thing. And what Steve Smith said in the press conference when we asked him like how it came down to Head and when Travis Head put his hand up, he said they didn't want to go down that whole Manas route again, Manas and Weatherall and then Steve Smith at 3. They wanted something dynamic at the top. And it happened to be Travis Head who ended up playing one of the greatest test innings of all time. My question is, how do you, and because it happened in the first test as well, like how do you go back on that and push him back down and say, no, now that like we won a test, we'll go back to what's working. That's for me is a tricky one.
If Head gets 40 odd, I mean, to be fair, by the time Head reached 30 odd, it felt we were already having that conversation on commentary, like, gee, this is working.
Yeah.
Right? In this isolated example, if he's walking out at the start of a test match and the circumstances are different, where it's where there are no runs on the board for either team, that may not be the right time. Indeed, it almost certainly wouldn't be. Coming back to what we said about England, there are moments to play in that way, typically in a test match. So, I think that there's a lot to play out. We don't know about Khawaja's fitness. We don't know about Australia's thinking around Travis Head. But there are. I can see a world where it is Head, and that makes it desperately difficult for Khawaja because he won't. Yeah. They won't punt Weatherall in that situation. I just don't see that happening. Which would bring Khawaja's career to an abrupt end. If that were to be where it's breaking, would he call time? I'm not sure. Yeah. I don't really know whether that would be something he would be keen to do or otherwise, and a lap in the car type thing around the Gabba. But at the same time, he's such a determined individual that he might dig his heels in. And we know he's determined from the way, I mean, going as far back as when I first started covering the Australian team a decade ago, he's always been punchy.
He has.
He might, the more he hears and the more he reads, it might make him even more determined to hold on. This is all the stuff. That's what I mean about not being too effusive one way or the other. Like it's difficult to form an opinion which hasn't got hairs on it. So
Yeah.
I think that this is going to be a really...
Yeah.
And the fact that it's a really long gap, 11-day gap.
That's true as well.
That's going to let this story have so many different iterations
For
to
sure.
it as information
Even
gets in
before
and out
we
of the
get to
Australian camp.
Brisbane.
Totally. And I think the first piece of the puzzle, what call are they going to make on Travis Head? Well, sorry, the first bit will be his fitness, Usman's fitness.
Yeah.
The next bit will be what's going on with Travis Head. And then after that, the potential to bring Webster in and have the option of Webster playing and Lyon playing, or
Yeah.
indeed Webster playing and another batter, i.e. Inglis, or indeed someone from outside the squad like Renshaw.
Yeah, and I think if just park the what happens to Usman Khawaja discussion aside, if say even if not this series, Travis Head becomes the full-time opener
Yeah.
on the back of what he did here, and don't forget he opens in every other format. He opens in T20 cricket, he opens in ODI cricket, he opens in Test cricket in the subcontinent.
Sure.
It's only only in Test cricket in Australia, England. He hasn't played in South Africa yet, but South Africa, you would assume...
SENA countries, right?
Yeah, the SENA countries, the SENA countries where he bats in the middle. So this would make him a full-time opener to start with. But then it just opens the door for different things. We don't know how long Steve Smith's going to continue. I still think for now Cam Green's best position in this batting lineup is 5, especially if he's going to bowl 12, 13 overs in normal test matches, not test matches that finish in 2 days. And then batting at 5 would be ideal for Cam Green, and Steve Smith plays as long as he does, Manas at 3. And then you have that flexibility over number 6, whether it's Bo Webster, if you don't need the extra bowler, you can bring in Josh Inglis, or say like you can also, once Steve Smith moves on, then could it be Renshaw, or say if Weatherall doesn't click, then Renshaw can open, and then
Or a younger player if they want to go down the Cam Kellaway route at some point. They've got
or Ollie Peak, and there are like
Ollie Peak,
a lot of middle order batters who are coming through the rank. The
I
problem
think they should, by the way, throw a 20-year-old in, but like that's the other part. If they want to blood someone at 6, they will have good. If they do well in this series, they'll have good options at the end of the summer. Which they of course have deployed. There have been instances where Australian teams have looked to play young guys at the end when they've done well, but it's a long way from that. But what you're saying, there are so many different ways this could go, and it's going to be an intense few days on that front. Sort of get the feeling that long term they've always said they don't want to compromise a strength in Head at 5.
Yeah.
So long term they have to make a call. Is the benefit of Head being their number 5, and from time to time playing world-beating innings like he did at Adelaide and Brisbane last year, World Test Championship final, etc. Is that offset by what he could do as an opener? That is the fundamental question. No one's doubting that he's going to do one or the other very well. It's what he's going to do better. Anyway, that's all the fun of the fair in the top 7 or top 8 indeed, if you want to include Webster in that conversation, in that scenario where they might not play Lyon next week. And then the other piece to this is whether Pat Cummins plays. I wonder whether they might see a 1-0 margin and the bowlers not having that much work in the legs, 67.5 overs across 2 innings, and the other fact around them having taken 20 wickets and a long break, and they go, well, actually, we've got the benefit of waiting for Adelaide for Cummins. What do you think the most likely scenario is?
I think that would be the ideal scenario if they can go one more test without Pat, give him more time. He bowled fantastically well back-to-back day, or 2 days apart over here in the nets for an entire hour, then almost for 40 minutes on the eve of the test match. He said that he needs few more. And yes, time now before Brisbane, but with a pink ball test, you have Mitchell Starc. I mean, it doesn't matter what colour of the ball is right now, is arguably the best fast bowler in the world right now, alongside Jasprit Bumrah. Scott Boland is just coming off a hat-trick, and the confidence of how he bowled in this second innings over here. And now that you know what Boland is going to do, he's just going to hang that ball outside 4th or 5th stump and just keep it there and see what the England batters do against him. And Doggett's debut was impressive. 5 wickets, all 5 with the short ball. I don't know how many have done that in their career. There might have been a few.
Went through it last night. I'm like, how did Doggett get his wickets? All of them.
All
one
of
form or
them.
another caught on the leg side with the short balls. Well, that's, I guess, a sign of the modern game and how quickly teams will go to that compared to how it used to be when it was the last resort. Now it's like, well, as Stokes, we saw him over number 9 of Australia's chase yesterday, did the 5-man back thing, which is not particularly pretty to watch and occasionally can be effective, but not yesterday, it wasn't.
I think the bigger question is around Josh Hazlewood. He seems to have just no
one's
slipped under
no one's talking about the big guy anymore.
I mean, we've learned that he's not going to be fit for Brisbane for sure. So, I mean, does he become available at some point? Like, we still don't know. I mean, there's been some mystery around how bad his injury is. Steve Smith was asked a couple of times. He didn't seem to know much about it.
Before the test, he was like, "Oh yeah," it was really
Yeah,
odd.
yeah,
His answer was like, "Oh yeah, I really don't know. I'll get back to you."
Yeah, I only know Pat is here, and like Pat was here, but Josh wasn't. So that's going to be another thing to keep an eye on, because who knows? By the end of this the series, maybe they will get Stark, Cummins, and Hazelwood to close out the Ashes, and hopefully, from our perspective, the series is still competitive at that point, and England do have a foot still in contention, but. I don't know. I mean, it is. I don't know. The bottom line is just feels a little deflating. Standing here rather than being sitting up there. We would have been approaching tea as the rain begins to fall.
I was going to say it was sunny when we started. Rain's about to come. I'm going to jump in because I've got a feeling we might get rain in a sec. A few more commitments to run through before we get there. By the way, you might have seen I took my shorts a minute ago.
Yeah.
Haven't had a chance to show this to the camera yet.
Oh yes, you haven't.
Big Boots UK. These are the mongrel boots. These are the mongrel riding boots that are part of their offering. I've been wearing them all week. Many people have said they look great because they do.
They do.
10% off. There's a link in the show notes. You need to do nothing other than click the link in the show notes.
That's it.
They're a great British company. They do a terrific job. Ryan, who runs, it's a family business, and all the good things there. They support Northamptonshire County Cricket Club. They sponsor Darren Lehman, for instance, there. I'll be talking to Buff on the final word in a couple of weeks when we get to Adelaide. The discount's already built in once you click the link. 10% off.
Wow.
And they are really nice boots. And they're all Australian made. It's all very much an Australian vibe, but Big Boots UK is where they're from. So if you're in the UK, what a great gift that would be. And I was meant to mention earlier, but I will do now. A nod to our friends at Stomping Ground Brewery in Melbourne, who have been making the final word beer.
Wow.
And as of next week, Jeff and I are going to have our ducks in a row for this. Patrons will have the chance to win one of 2 cases each week, one on Storytime or one on the weekly show. All you need to do is be a new pledger, patreon.com/the final word. Links very, very top of the show notes. Patreon.com/the final word. Become a new patron of ours at any level. The base level's fine, of course.
That's fine.
We don't discriminate. Or if you're an existing patron, simply up your pledge. You can up it by £1 or whatever. It's the symbolism. It's the idea of sticking with us and going with us again. Change your pledge and up it, and you'll automatically go into the draw as well. We'll pull two names randomly out of the hat each week, which will mean not only do you get the slab, but your number, therefore, will get read out on Storytime and we'll do your answer.
There you go.
So it's a great way to jump the queue if that's your thing. Not to want to mess with the queue too much, but it's just an emblem of like where we're trying to, give you something back for being patrons and supporters of ours, great members of the show. So thank you to Stomping Ground on that front, and we'll have that at our book launch on the 27th of November. Only a few days from now on Thursday. It's at the Commercial Club in Melbourne. There'll be Stomping Ground on tap. They're giving us a free keg for the night. Isn't that lovely? And we've got an unbelievably fun MC. I'm not going to tell you who it is. I might reveal that with Jeff. I'll do that tomorrow with Jeff when we do our next step. But our MC is an absolute belter. Baz, your hair's getting wet. You've got even more media commitments, having done your first at 4:30 this morning. I'll let you go. Let's have some food. This has been the Final Word Wash-Up episode, The Daily. Thank you, Maurice Blackburn Lawyers. They're our proud principal partner. Every single ep of the show is brought to you by Australia's #1 plaintiff law firm, and we love them for it. More about them in our longer programs, which start again through the new week. Sad the test is over, but we're glad it's happened as well. Catch you soon.
Nothing wrong with the pitch.